Some believe you were responsible for that, although I'm not. People think I'm behind a lot. From the beginning, Yungeen Ace has denied any role in Foolio's demise. However, as the prosecution of Foolio's murderers progresses, fresh video has emerged, and it's so terrible that his own attorney simply left. Everything changes when a direct connection to Ace is shown in the video. I'm fully informed of the film and its implications for the case. Let's begin. Turmoil in the courtroom. It wasn't just any Ring camera that leaked the video, or low-resolution club video. No, this was raw, uncut, inside video that was purportedly taken from one of the suspect's personal devices. In it, a guy whose face resembles one of Yungeen Ace's known associates is seen reliving the night Foolio passed away. Not merely observing, but also discussing, bragging, and acting it out. This type of incident occurs once in a generation, according to legal experts who spoke to the media without being asked. If you're not prepared to bury the defense bench, you don't bring such a bombshell into a murder trial. This instance was a circus already. Foolio, whose true name was Charles Jones, was shot dead in a Tampa hotel parking lot on June 23, 2024, while celebrating his 26th birthday. 5 persons were charged with his murder. A Tesla in Sentry mode, 3 shooters, military-style coordination, 2 vehicles, brass catchers on the rifles to prevent shell cases, 1 victim killed, 3 others injured, and what was already airtight became bulletproof were all captured on multiple surveillance cameras during the entire attack. Sean Gathright, Isaiah Chance, Davon Murphy, Rashad Murphy, and Alicia Andrews were the 5 defendants that were already stacked as of July 2025. Includes accusations that include tampering with evidence, attempted murder, and first-degree murder. For 4 of them, the state of Florida is seeking the death penalty. The only person currently escaping that destiny is Alicia Andrews, who reportedly assisted in locating Foolio but refrained from firing the shot. Additionally, this video might be the last straw. According to an unnamed source who is present at the emergency or closed door conference between the court and the defense team just after the leaked video was shown, Yungeen Ace's attorney stated that the case was unwinnable. Furthermore, Ace's attorney left the court less than an hour later, even though no formal statement was recorded. To be clear, Yungeen Ace is not facing any murder charges. He is not one of the 5 people on trial right now. But according to reports, he is more closely linked to the incident than was previously thought in this damning, uncut, and uncensored footage. And if you're on the defensive, that's terrifying, because the kicker is here. Guilt is no longer the only issue in this trial. Has to do with being close to guilt. The state is also keeping an eye on everyone. Remember, one of the suspects in Foolio's murder has previously incriminated himself in a really stupid manner. Rashad Murphy decided to represent himself in a case involving the death sentence after firing his attorneys. Murphy, Davon,
holding it like this in front of him, and then he starts going, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." And then he walks around, and then he does it again. "Blah, blah, 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 blah." And he does it multiple times.
Asked why he didn't flee to Mexico. He said the best way to hide from a white man is in plain sight.
He was bouncing around abandoned houses and different female houses, and at the end he says, "I didn't need to go to Mexico because the best way to hide from a white man is in plain sight."
Now that this additional film has been leaked, it appears that they are all cooperating with the prosecution. According to case-related sources, the leaked video shows more than simply the shooting. It depicts suspects celebrating it, making jokes about it, and perhaps even pointing the finger at higher-ups in the 1200 and AT games. Thus, we return to Yungeen Ace. He has long been charged with utilizing his rap career to help his alleged gang affiliation, ATK, gain legitimacy. He has released songs like Game Over and Do It, often perceived as covert attacks against Foolio. Additionally, weeks after Foolio passed away, his own mother made an appearance on live streaming, making fun of Fio by name.
Got you on live, ma. They can hear you on live, ma. Look.
Hey, La, what's up?
Who you smoke? Who you smoke?
Foolio.
Goes beyond simple rudeness. Antagonism following a murder is what that is. That is a pattern. Pattern matters in court as well. This trial has evolved beyond simple street retaliation. Prosecutors in Florida think this was more than a gunshot. It was a planned multi-gang, multi-city plot that was fueled by the poisonous feedback loop of credibility and clout, and had its roots in social media warfare. And now that the feedback loop has come full circle, a lawyer is leaving the courtroom in shock. And you have to see all the proof against Fio's killers to realize how horrible things are for them. Captured in 4K. In what investigators characterize as a deliberate, gang-related hit. Foolio was smoked on June 23, 2024, while celebrating his birthday in Tampa. The planning began long before the murderous night. And it's absurd how these guys genuinely believed they were going to execute the ideal lick. They were unaware that they would be directly linked to the hit by leaving a digital trace. Alicia Andrews sent a message on June 21, 2024, asking to reserve an Airbnb in Rashawn Murphy's name for the dates of June 22nd to 24th, 2024. This wasn't a last-minute reservation or a coincidence. What the feds would later refer to as a straight-up murder conspiracy began with this action. These villains was actually organizing this joint as if it were a military mission. Isaiah, Chance, Alicia Andrews, Sean Gathite, Rashad Murphy, and Davon Murphy were the 5 suspects that were planning to actually body Foolio. They turned Foolio's birthday celebration post into a GPS tracker for his own murder. Most heinous aspect of the entire situation. Since Foolio was posting about his appearances at Teaser's Gentlemen's Club and Truth 18 nightclub on June 22, 2024. The suspects were actually following him on Instagram to find out where he was going. This hit's coordination was completely out of control. It resembled a cartel operation more than typical street fighting. There were 2 whips used. A silver Chevy Shaw Gathite is the primary driver of a black Chevy Impala, while Isaiah, Chance, is the driver of a cruiser with Alicia Andrews riding shotgun, while the Impala was transporting the shooters and all the equipment. The crews were playing lookout, doing reconnaissance, and providing intelligence. These rides later moved from Jacksonville to Tampa, according to license plate reader data, illustrating how predators stalk their prey across state boundaries. However, tracking cars was only one aspect of the surveillance game. These guys were using some sort of advanced street intelligence timing. Isaiah Chance was chatting with Sean Gathite on Alicia Andrews' phone, in the vicinity of the crime. Seen Chance's own phone was also pinging. These weren't amateur hour cats, as demonstrated by this multi-device communication technique. They were trying to keep one step ahead of the authorities and knew how they traced suspects through phone towers. The suspects later moved in perfect unison, gliding in and out of the picture like skilled killers, according to video footage from several locations. Teasers, Truth 18, and the actual murder scene at the house's 2 suites. The video shows hours possibly, even days of practice runs and planning. Isaiah Chance and Sean Gathright loaded pipes they would use on
carrying a bag large enough to what? Carry 2 AK-style rifles.
5-1 Fio had no idea that every move he made was being watched, videotaped, and relayed. Back to a group of killers who were coming closer by the hour. The events of the night of June 22nd and the early hours of June 23rd played out like a real hunter-prey situation. In Truth 18, Chance and Andrews pulled out their whips to keep an eye on Foolio as they followed him to Teasers. Chance tracked Fio's every move like a straight predator, and security cameras captured him wearing a recognizable black sweatshirt with a red insignia, making him easy to identify. When Fio started to leave for a hotel on McKinley around
4:15 in the morning, Jones began to head to a hotel on McKinley.
Fio was unaware that death was actually following him, as numerous cars followed his every move during the early morning hours of what would be his last day of life. The victim is observed being followed by one of the suspect cars, but they stayed across the street rather than following them into the parking.
One of the suspect vehicles is seen following the victim. However, instead of following them into a parking lot, they stage across the street.
There was a reason for this strategic placement across the street. The operatives were able to stay low-key and retain eye contact with their target thanks to some true strategic thinking. You wouldn't expect ordinary street guys to position themselves like this. You'd expect trained batters too. Additionally, it demonstrates the degree of preparation that went into this murder. The black Chevy Impala arrived at the parking lot of the house with 2 suites at 4:34 a.m., carefully avoiding direct sight of the victim's vehicles. The silver Chevy Cruze passed past the parking lot 3 minutes later at 4:37 a.m., swiftly, bouncing after crossing the victim's whips twice. A last recon run to ensure everything was ready for their attack and to confirm the location of their target. Several security cameras captured this last surveillance pass. You can also notice the methodical technique when you watch the video. It's not like the whip cruises through once. In order to ensure that the occupants have a clear view of the target car, the number of people they are dealing with, and any potential obstructions that could disrupt their plan, it makes 2 passes. Then came the moment that would forever alter the course of events. 3 gunmen got out of a car at 4:38 and started walking toward the hotel.
At 4:38, 3 shooters exit a vehicle and walked in the direction of the hotel.
Several cameras recorded the actual hit, including one from a Tesla in Sentry mode, providing a thorough documentation of one of the most heinous killings in modern history. Davon Murphy, Sean Gathright, and Rashad Murphy were the 3 gunmen who got out of the Impala. They arrived to make sure their target wouldn't survive, as evidenced by the utterly destructive artillery they brought. Gathite and Davon Murphy were firing AR-style rifles with brass catchers, while Rashad Murphy was firing a handgun with an extended magazine on full auto.
They murdered Jones with a handgun and 2 rifles. This barrage of gunfire also struck 3 additional victims who miraculously survived this incident.
The horrific reality of those last seconds was later revealed by police surveillance footage, which also captured.
This is at the hotel, and you can see the shooters are getting in position for their planned out murder, and they are shooting at Charles now, and you can see that he's the passenger in that car that's moving and trying to flee, and again they're still shooting at.
Even when their target attempted to flee, the shooters continued to blow, demonstrating the attack's unrelenting character. There were no warning shots or attempts to do harm, to ensure that Fio wasn't leaving that parking lot alive. This was a straightforward execution done with military accuracy and unwavering resolve. 3 other people were wounded in the incident but survived, according to the coroners later. Confirmation that Foolio was declared dead at the site. However, this was neither a straightforward get-back scenario nor even a random act of violence. Investigators think that the 12,200 gangs and the ATK collaborated to attack Foolio as part of an continuous conflict in Jacksonville. The suspects in the murder were members of the ATK and 1,200 gangs, which were rivals of Foolio's 6-block group and had a history of gang warfare. The extent of this scheme and the suspects' attempts to hide their identities in the hours and days after the murder were made clear by what detectives later learned. In the end, the evidence they left behind brought them to ruin. The digital traces that made everything public. These guys truly believed they had executed the ideal hit in the immediate wake of Foolio's murder. Brass catchers were utilized on their guns to prevent shells from being left behind, placed their whips in strategic locations to evade discovery, and attempted to conceal their digital footprints using some advanced communication techniques. They didn't, however, foresee the extensive network of contemporary surveillance equipment that permeates the modern world and the deadly errors they would make in the hours after the assassination that would finally reveal their entire operation. Law enforcement's realization that this wasn't just another street shooting, but rather a well-planned operation that needed a serious reaction was the first step in the investigation that would ultimately bring down.
Surveillance video was critical in this investigation, as suspects were seen on video following Jones from location to location.
More than simply the video from the crime site would establish these men's guilt. The breadcrumb trail that investigators would follow from Jacksonville to Tampa and back was the extensive digital footprint they left across several platforms and places. The suspects attempted to keep up the appearance that they had nothing to do with the murder. However, what they did during those pivotal initial hours would give investigators a detailed account of their guilt and their efforts to hide their role in one of the most horrifying killings in Florida. The suspects brought ring camera footage of Davian Murphy and Isaiah Chance back to their Airbnb. Investigators pointed out that the suspects appeared to comprehend some aspects of avoiding detection while entirely ignoring others, highlighting the irony of being caught on ring camera footage while attempting to cover up a murder. They were clever enough to use several communication devices and brass catchers, but they were also stupid enough to go back to a place where they knew home security systems were recording them. Despite its meticulous approach and obvious pre-planning, the escape plan ultimately had catastrophic faults that would reveal the entire scheme. Around 15:08 hours on June 23, 2024, Rashad Murphy, Isaiah Chance, and Alicia Andrews drove a 2016 gray Infiniti QX60 from the Airbnb to Sean Gathite's crib in Jacksonville. The silver Chevy Cruze was driven back to Jacksonville by Davon Murphy. At the same time, their choice to use Uber for their getaway shows both criminal sophistication and outright idiocy. On the one hand, utilizing a ride-sharing service separated them from the crime scene and eliminated the anxiety of traveling alone while perhaps being seen. Uber, on the other hand, maintains thorough records of each ride, including GPS tracking, payment information, and driver identification, resulting in an unquestionable digital record of their whereabouts. That would be hard to contest in court. The attempt by Sean Gathite to get rid of the evidence would turn out to be one of the most devastating pieces of evidence that exposed the guilt of the entire crew, showing how even the most cautious of criminals can make blunders. After driving the black Chevy Impala to a Polk County family member's home, Gathite cleaned the Impala, moved belongings to a yellow 2004 Toyota 4Runner, and left it there. Gathite had no idea that this family member would turn out to be an important witness, giving police home surveillance footage of his questionable behavior that would be hard to deny. Even those closest to the accused were shocked and horrified when they understood the extent of what had been done, as evidenced by the family member's assistance with law authorities. The surveillance footage of Gathite, no defense lawyer could overcome the potent visual narrative of guilt that was produced by the frenzied shifting of objects between automobiles and the attempt to clean the Impala. What appeared to be a normal traffic stop turned out to be the first significant break in the investigation, which ultimately exposed the entire plot. When the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office pulled over Gathite on June 26, 2024, they found rifle shells that might have been used in an earlier attempt on Foolio's life in October 2023 during a traffic stop on Gathite's whip. During a search, his car included spent shells, rifle ammunition, a Glock 9mm handgun, and other items. This finding would turn out to be the thread that, when tugged, would reveal the whole plot. Gathite's ride contained expended casings, but they weren't just any old bullets. Prosecutors would utilize the forensic evidence that connected him to a number of violent crimes, including prior attempts on Foolio's life that demonstrated a trend of increasing aggression to support their case for the death penalty. However, the suspect's own conversations may have included the most damning evidence, revealing the haughtiness and lack of regret that would ultimately be their downfall. Gathwright's phone data showed that Murphy might have texted, "I'm coming home, my thirst has been satisfied." Murphy, crack open a bottle of Don Julio today. Hours after the murder, this message was sent, demonstrated a level of callousness that would stun even seasoned law enforcement officials, proving to prosecutors that the murder was not only planned but also enjoyed by the murderers. An unsettling image of growing street warfare and a pattern of attacks that had been building toward this final act of retaliation was drawn by the investigation's links to earlier acts of violence. Spent rifle casings found in Gathite's whip were linked to a May 23 homicide and a prior attempt to kill Theo the previous year. Gathwright had experience with this. Additionally, he was allegedly engaged in Foolio's October 2023 shooting wound to the foot. The forensic data gathered at the scene, investigators were horrified by the scene, which was overwhelming and depicted professional-level violence. 319mm Glock spent shell casings were recovered at the scene, but none from rifles because the two AR-style weapons seen in security video had devices attached to collect them. However, the investigation faced a significant challenge when one suspect managed to stay on the run for months, leading law enforcement on a manhunt that would span multiple states and involve federal agencies. Don Murphy remained at large for nearly 7 months, a period marked by his alleged participation in a Twitter Spaces session on September 26, 2024, where he made threatening statements and hinted at his location. Interview.
Turn yourself in, bro. You don't got no money. Your life already on, like, bro, you don't have a life no more. You baby, Murphy. Oh my God.
I'm in your hood right now.
One of the most striking instances of criminal idiocy in recent memory is the choice to use social media while under investigation by many law enforcement authorities. Murphy wasn't merely trying to elude the local cops. The FBI, several state and municipal agencies, and the U.S. Marshals were all after him. Nevertheless, he made the decision to share his opinions, maybe his location, with thousands of listeners on a site that is continuously watched by law authorities. The first 3 individuals were apprehended in a concerted operation that demonstrated the value of interagency cooperation, and the arrests began to pile up in July 2024. On July 27, 2024, Alicia Andrews, Isaiah Chance, and Sean Gathwright were taken into custody by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Body cam footage of the arrests showed SWAT troops apprehending the defendants during a thunderstorm, producing spectacular images that were eventually aired nationwide. The arrest of Rashad Murphy on July 30, 2024, following an hours-long siege at the Jacksonville Collins Preserve Apartments, was very dramatic. The tenseness of his capture and the psychological strain that months of inquiry had imposed on the remaining suspects are highlighted by reports that he held himself at gunpoint and was on FaceTime with his girlfriend prior to surrendering. The picture of a murder suspect bidding farewell to his lover on FaceTime while he is holding himself at gunpoint symbolizes the final link between contemporary technology and street violence, demonstrating how digital communication and social media have become essential components of even the most dire criminal circumstances. The last arrest occurred on January 6, 2025, when the U.S. Marshal Service, Gang Unit, and SWAT Squad of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office apprehended Davon Murphy at an apartment complex on Label Street in Jacksonville. His capture concluded the arrest in this intricate case and signaled the end of a 6-month quest, providing closure to the investigation stage and freeing up prosecutors to concentrate on strengthening their case in preparation for trial. This case was especially fascinating because it demonstrated how traditional detective work and state-of-the-art digital forensics might be combined to create a thorough inquiry that looked everywhere. The suspect's own digital admissions and Statements to law enforcement following their arrests were possibly the most damaging of all. Andrews Alicia, she demonstrated her presence at Teaser's Truth 18 and the Homes 2 Suites parking lot by identifying herself in all pertinent footage. During her post-MIDI Miranda interrogation, she also acknowledged letting Chance use her phone to talk to Sean Gathite during the tracking phase and verified that Chance was operating the silver Chevy Cruze while following Foolio Andrews. However, denied knowing about the intended murder and stated that she and Chance were at the sites to ask about party admission costs and were in the hotel parking lot. A great deal because they were lost. She was caught lying several times, according to the authorities, especially when it came to why she was at the nightclubs, since surveillance refuted her statements. Since the girl was telling the truth, things are now looking bleak for them all. Do the people who killed Fio have any hope? Time will tell. In the meantime, by clicking on the boxes that are playing on your screen, you can view more videos that are similar to this one.